I'm sure we both agree that I would say it is in our best interest in national security to have a supply chain that is controlled by U.S. or our allies. And I also would ask you to agree that energy independence certainly would be a priority in our national security.
Indeed.
Given that, you also have a record of being an advocate for climate change. I don't think that's changed. Would you, is that
I wouldn't say I'm for climate change. I'm for fighting it, certainly, yes.
So are you aware then that China is the largest emitter of CO2?
Yes.
And are you aware that China is responsible for 90% of the plastics? 90% of the plastics in the oceans come from 4 rivers in China. Are you aware of that?
I didn't know that statistic, but I'm not surprised by it.
Well, are you aware also that China is the largest violator of fishing regulations and laws?
Yes. And
of course, you're also aware of critical minerals.
Yes.
Are you aware that China controls, either directly or indirectly, more than 62%, in many cases the preponderance or absolute control of critical minerals?
A condition we are working hard to change in this administration.
And I'm going to ask you further about that. But critical minerals, as you know, is also required for EV.
Indeed.
Seems to be that cobalt, lithium, in some cases germanium, is absolutely required for EV. And are you aware that to meet the demands today, that the U.S. would have to increase mining by 2,000% for 20 years to reach the demands today?
Well, the chemistry of our batteries has not completely stabilized in a way that I think can be fully predicted for the next
There
decade,
may be
but
innovation.
there's no question that we're going to
right now.
Yeah, there's no question that we're going to need to
no
source
question.
more minerals, both domestically and from friendly countries.
Well, and that's the catch, is we all want cleaner, better, more efficient. But your stated goal and President Biden's stated goal and my stated goal, and certainly President Trump's was the same, is that we seek energy independence. We seek energy dominance so we're not held hostage by foreign entities.
Indeed.
So how do you get to be energy independent when the components of EV today are all controlled by China? And have you done an assessment of how much mining we would have to do and where the critical minerals are and what we'd have to do in order to meet the demands of a very aggressive program to convert? And have you done an assessment?
Yes, thanks for the question. While some of the finer points related to extraction are probably better answered by my colleagues at the Department of the Interior, our Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, which is jointly run by both us and the Department
And what does
of
the
Energy,
assessment say since you've completed it?
Well, what that work is doing is identifying different points, not just in the raw material extraction itself, but also in the refining, where we see that if we were to...
But have you identified where our sticking points is?
Right, so a lot of the...
How to get there in 10 years? Because it seems like on the supply chain, if China controls it today, and we're putting moratorium on mines in Minnesota that have the largest nickel deposit in critical minerals, and we're not moving forward on securing the supply chain, but we're moving forward on solar cells.
Well, again, the Department of Energy...
Solar cells made in China.
So it'd be much easier to answer.
So how are you going to figure this out?
Okay. So part of what you're describing is the motivation behind the investments that the Department of Energy has been leading in enhancing U.S.
Well, I agree. There's effort, but have you identified source? Because there's a difference between practical, real, and fiction.
Well, I know
how are you going to be independent if China produces the very components that make up EV?
This is exactly why we're doing the work to produce them here in the United States. I wish
what are we doing on cobalt? How much cobalt are we producing in this country? The next 10 years, what do we need? And how are we going to... I'm a military guy. I love plans.
Great.
You know I do.
Well, first of all, I'd encourage you to become familiar with the private investment and the public-private partnership investment, real dollars, not just plans, that are going out through these DOE
Have you read the Critical Mineral Report, the Multi-Agency Report 2017?
I have not read the 2017 Multi-Agency Critical Mineral Report.
I am very familiar.
I'm sure you are.
Absolutely familiar. Have you read the 2017 Climate Change Report, Multi-Agency?
I believe that's informed some of the work that is in our
read
plans through the Joint Energy, but I've not read that document cover to cover, no.
I would suggest that, Mr. Secretary, that you read those two documents.
Well, I can,
Because on both cases, what they clearly state is the U.S. is becoming dependent on China.